you're you were constantly there were actually two of you. There was the person you really were, but you could never be, and then you learn to perform constantly. Everything you do is a performance, and in a way, it's true for everybody. Some of us perform a whole lot, and aren't being very authentic at all. But being able to be authentic, to be who I am, and to not feel guilty about it.
Welcome back to Beyond Small Talk, where real conversations lead to new perspectives. I'm your host, Chris. Joining me today is Larry Bohannon Goldman. Larry, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
It's good to be here.
How did we get to this point as far as the U.S. goes? It seems like we're heading into a direction where we're almost more divided than ever.
I am not an expert on that, but I would say there's several things that stand out to me. One is that having power is more important to some people than virtually anything else, and being able to use that power to run their agenda and to have things go the way they want them to. I don't think any political side is immune to that. It's something I think you have to really work on, and throughout my whole life I've become more and more aware that balance is so important, and it's really difficult to do. But I'm going to start there with a lot of things, because if I am just all the way over here and I'm not going to listen to you and all that, you don't get anywhere positive with that. But I do think that I think a lot of it has to do with the desire for power and to run things the way a particular group wants to run them. I also think that as a part of that, fear is being used a lot. As an example, there is so much misinformation about the trans community, what it means to be trans, why would a person even think that or be that. What's going on there, and it's so foreign to many of us. It was to me, even though I was an out gay man in my 50s, I was still extremely ignorant about the trans community and what is going on in the mind of a trans person, which of course is going to be different for every single one of them in one way, but then there will be a number of similarities with them, and so I've learned a great deal, but when I hear the things that I'm hearing, and virtually everything I hear that's alarmist is misinformed or just flat out a lie, which is so unfortunate, but that allows people to have power over other people, to say, these people, we want to stay away from them, and they're doing this, and just come on over here, and let's just band together, and at the cost of, and all I have to do is say Germany 1930s. Same thing happened there. Same kind of thing happened there, where using fear, and Germany was going through a terrible, terrible time of Reconstruction.
We got their economies upside down at that point.
and from everything that I've read and I've learned, really would have been smarter for the allies who kind of made the rules of what Germany had to do to go lighter on them and to be a little bit more compassionate. Obviously, they needed to pay reparations for a war that they started that didn't need to have started. At the same time, the things that you saw happening and the momentum that Hitler was able to rally around, so much of it was about them and us, and them, to the point where 6 million Jews are exterminated. And I understand there are people who think that didn't happen, but just talk with a few of the people who lived to see their entire families die, and to survive themselves and the trauma that they went through. And you very quickly realize, this is not something you manufacture to make people feel sorry for you.
Well, no, you don't have museums of things that happen if they don't take place.
Right.
I mean, you bring up a valid point of people in power and the way they thinking, but it makes me think of the open-mindedness and the closed-mindedness of those people.
Unfortunately, yes. And I know for the most part, unless a person is open to listening to you, my brother, that I will hardly bring into this, but my brother is very firm in his Christian faith, and I am in mine too. But he's coming at it at a totally different viewpoint. He's viewing Scripture the way he was taught. That it basically says that any kind of same-sex relationship is forbidden. It's wrong. It's bad. It's evil. And he approaches everything he says and does with me with that viewpoint. And I say that to say that I was talking to him. He lives in Raleigh, so we don't see each other much. But we were going back and forth in a bit of maybe an argumentative, but clearly each of us had our own viewpoint. And he was pointing out, this, and Scripture says that, and it says that. To which I'm thinking, yes, Scripture, as you understand it, says that. Of course, 40,000 different denominations can't be wrong, can they? Yeah, and not all of those denominations think that the other ones are wrong and are all going to hell, but a good number of them do. Right. And my point in that is that, you're welcome to think that. He can think that. I can't change that. But when there is a scriptural principle or a scripture that clearly addresses something he's talking about, then you can't jury rig that to say what you want it to, or just go, oh, well, never mind that, because that's not working for me suddenly. And what happened is, but I said, you need to watch my life. Scripture says you will know them by their fruit. Those who produce good fruit, you're going to know that, I'll put it in the modern vernacular, walk with Christ, or know God and love Him, and want to, in my case, the way I say it, be the hands and feet of Jesus as best I can. It's not a performance. There are times where it is very much a thing of faith. My dad was a very difficult person to get along with, and I learned to love him by faith. Yeah. Actually, not opening my mouth when I wanted to argue because I had something good to say, but he could not carry on a conversation as an adult with me because he thought everything I said that was against him was an argument, and of course I would say, oh, I'm not arguing, because see, there you go. So I couldn't win. But I did learn, to love him by faith. And so, a good number of those things that you do, you make a choice. You make a choice to have joy. I may not be happy about a lot of things, but that doesn't mean I cannot have joy in, the tremendous diversity in nature and, all that God has given us, and the responsibility that we have to let go of a good deal of that to help others. So I was having this conversation with my brother, and I said, watch my fruit. Scripture says that you will know them by their fruit. And he said, fruit aside. And I went, what? You can't do that. You just said to me that, well, I'm going to put that scripture aside for a second because it doesn't mesh with what I'm wanting to tell you right now. And I'm like, you can't do that, and that was when I knew I really can't talk to him in any kind of deep conversation because he has got his mind made up. I have mine made up too, but I can back it up.
Well, I think a lot of religion boils down to your interpretation and the mold in which you're cut from it. And if it don't fit your mold, well, then you're not going to like somebody else's mold of it.
Yeah. And just real quickly, I would bring up that that can be extremely culturally affecting. Let me explain. In 1946, and there is a film out now called 1946, the movie. Okay. I'll have to paraphrase it. The translation that shifted culture. And the story, in a nutshell, is about the RSV, Revised Standard Version, translators, and translating the whole Bible and getting done with it in 1946 and putting it out there. And for the first time in 1 Corinthians, there's a verse that talks about homosexuals.
Yeah.
It's never been translated that way before. And the word itself did not come into use in English until, I want to say it's like the 1880s or so. But in other words, this was not a word that was embedded in Greek or Roman culture. It didn't exist. Paul uses two words that had never been translated homosexual before, but arsenokoidy, I might not be saying it quite right, and malakoi. But these were two words that were put together. Arsenokoi was a word that essentially Paul invented. There's no, from everything I've studied,
right,
and I could be wrong, and that's okay, but it was not a commonly used word. But those two words together have for a very long time been translated to, and the way I'll put it is this, might be a little bit general, but in Greek and Roman culture, a pedastry, where the older men kind of showed the youngsters how it's done, and it was very common practice. And if you were the receiving person, that was humiliating, but it was okay for these young adults because they were being trained, taught by their elders. But I think for most of us today, we'd go, of course that's wrong, but it was common practice. And that is what that is one of the beliefs in one of the translations, or more than one. It's one of the ways it has been translated to mean that kind of practice. The concept of a committed same-sex relationship didn't exist in Bible times. Doesn't mean they didn't exist.
It just wasn't spoken on. But
they weren't spoken of. And, by no means was it addressed. But before and after that time, in a number of different cultures, Same gender. I'm going to say I really dislike same-sex relationships because it immediately, some people go to the sexual part of it, and it's not even about that until it's about that.
Yeah.
It's about a relationship with a person, and there were I know in Native American culture there was, for example, what was called the what was it? Can't think of it right now. If I wasn't trying to, I would. But there was a name for a person who had a same-sex attraction, and it was recognized that they had traits that people who were straight did not have, and that were beneficial to the whole of the tribe, clearly, and they were revered. Obviously that's not true with, WASP America.
Current times.
But, there... So, let me get back to... So, in the film, 1946, and I actually had the opportunity... You asked me earlier if I had ever been interviewed for a podcast, and I guess I would say no, but I was for a movie.
Really?
I don't know if I'm in it, and I really doubt that I am, because I know that Rocky is her nickname, the producer and everything of the movie. I know that she interviewed probably thousands of people, and as the film, I'm not sure, it wasn't just being started to be worked on when I was... let me think. It would have been in the late, maybe mid 2010s, or a little bit further. But I was able to go to a conference where she spoke. One of the ladies that is heavily involved with this, and also Rocky, the producer, and they already had sort of a direction they were going in, but it's been years since then, and now it's out, and it's been at different film festivals. The one in France, I can't pronounce that name, but it's if you went to it and were willing to listen, it would blow you out of the water, because it tells the story of that seminarian who was reading through the RSV in the late 50s or early 60s, I believe it was, and he wrote to the committee, to the head guy, and he said, I think y'all made a mistake. And he told them why, and he learned Greek in high school, which is unusual, but this was in Canada.
Right.
He learned Greek in high school, so when he was in seminary, he was steps ahead of everybody else and learning the Greek even better. And so he contacted them, and they kept going back and forth. And in the end, the head person for that committee said, you're right. We have looked at that, and you're right. It was a mistake. But at that point, it was 1960, and the Living Bible was getting ready to be written, New American Standard, and guess where they went to get their inspiration for that particular verse and what it meant?
Where?
The RSV. Oh, but I forgot to tell you that the 1960 RSV had just come out, and it was too late to fix that. They agreed that it was not right, but they would have to fix it in the next, and they did. It's not in the RSV, the latest version of the RSV, anymore.
So even though he found this newfound interpretation, they weren't able to adapt it.
And so the fellow went on and was a pastor in Canada, and but this Kathy Baldock and Rocky, who is filming and producing the film of the story.
Yeah.
And there was another guy named Ed, and I forget his last name at the moment, but Ed and her, they went to the Harvard Library and they went through tons of stuff. They finally found the letters from this seminarian to the RSV committee and the back and forth and everything. So they were able to document what was said, and it just, here came the story of how this one mistranslation ended up affecting culture a lot, because now people can say, see, it's right here. It says, nor homosexuals will inherit the kingdom of God, right there in Scripture.
But they had evidence to back up what they were trying to present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are other ways to interpret it. That's always been true of any kind of writing. You remember in high school, the teacher might have said, well, what do you think the writer was trying to say when they wrote this? And we got all kinds of crazy things we said, and some of them might have really been exactly, on the spot, and others might have been like, well, gee, I've never heard that before.
Right.
But, and like I said earlier, 40,000 different denominations can't be wrong. Oh, wait a minute. Something's not right here. There are many different ways to interpret, but there are rules that you follow in terms of what's called hermeneutics and other ways of approaching Scripture, that you are faithful to it. Yeah. And even in doing that the right way, it is quite possible. And there are a number of books and podcasts out that do that. And it's part of what helped me when I came out in my 50s. I had started to read a lot and had read Torn by Justin Lee. There were a number of other ones that I was looking for today, because I had a whole section that I keep so I can hand it to somebody if it's something that they need. And I couldn't find them. I was like, where did I move them? But there are a number of books out there, and once you talk to, for example, if you get to hear a podcast called Freed Hearts, and it's a couple, a married couple. Their daughter came out to them, and she does a TED Talk. Highly recommend. Very good place to start is the TED Talk. Oh, goodness gracious, what is their name? I'll think of it. But all you'd have to do is look up. I just said it. The name of the podcast is look that up, and they'll have that resource, like on their page, and then also you can actually listen to the podcast. But they freedhearts.com, I think. But all you'd have to do is Google Freed Hearts, and you get to the right place. Very compassionate, loving couple. She is a pastor. She's a minister. She has gone to seminary on purpose, and from what I could tell, it was after this happened that she said, I got to get invested in this and understand things better. But a very good place to start, and that TED Talk is really good. She just talks about how she realized that more importantly than anything else when her daughter came out, she just needed to love her. And, for some people, I think that the church is so all-consuming to them, and what the church thinks of them, and they've been taught, that being gay or lesbian or being a part of the community of the LGBTQIA community it's just a choice. And that's the first thing I'm going to tell somebody if I hear them say that is, let me tell you why it's not. I grew up quite effeminate in my mannerisms and everything, and still am somewhat. One of the things that I was told, by those who wanted to fix me, and they were coming from a good place, they thought. They really weren't, I don't think, but nonetheless, they had good intentions, but they thought that I was broken and that God could fix me. Well, I put it this way: I don't think I'm broken. I wasn't broken, not in that way. I think everybody's broken to some degree. You can call it the fall of man, or, you can not bring any religious
aspects
wording into it at all. But people can really suck. They can be terrible. They can just be the worst thing in the world for you to be around. They cause death. They cause pain. But at the same time, there's the whole other end of that. And so I sometimes talk myself into a corner and forget what rabbit hole I came out of. But anyway, I do remember that even as probably 2 or 3 years old, I didn't know this, but I was told by my cousin later that she was watching me, and that kid is special. There's something different about him, and I will say that in my family, I have a cousin who is gay. He was not out, but his sister confirmed it, and I'll go with what she says.
In a roundabout way.
Yeah. But I understand completely why he did not come out, because he lived in Greece, and you don't come out, especially in your older years.
Yeah.
In Greece, I don't think, unless you have a very strong constitution. But then I had my other cousin. Her son is gay. And then my third cousin, not third cousin, but the third one of those family, right. Her daughter was lesbian. Wanted to try to not be lesbian, and I fully understand that, because that was me for 25, 30 years. Because I was taught that, if you were gay, it's a choice. And, even the whole time through all that, I'm going like, what? But I listened, because once again, kind of that thing of control, that, if you say, well, if you make the choice of being gay, then you're going to hell. Well, I'm sorry, but you are not the gatekeeper to the club, the gatekeeper of the door of Club Heaven.
Yeah.
But many people appoint themselves that, and so that was my reality. I thought that God would fix me, kind of, sort of, maybe. Prayed, cried, did everything that I knew to do. Studied the Bible and on. Did everything except official reparative therapy. That's a whole nother thing from the pit of hell, in my opinion. But had a lot of those things applied to me, like, well, you need to go play basketball with the guys and do guy stuff, and it'll help you. No.
Yeah.
No, because that just wasn't an interest of mine. So the cousin, knew already at about age 2 or 3. She said, and she was right. And then again, her son, and just on and on. It was like, and I won't go into other relations that I have, because that's their story to tell.
Right.
But dotted throughout our family tree are people in the LGBTQIA family, and I think every single one of them would tell you, I didn't choose this. If you watch how gay people, as an example, are treated, Who wants to be treated like that? Who would purposely say, I'm gay? Yay, I'm gay. And then from the age of elementary school on through middle school and high school and college, be harassed, sometimes killed, beaten up, because they're delicate or they're butch or whatever. No, they didn't choose it. I didn't choose it, And when I got honest with myself, it's like there's nothing to fix. It was as if, and I don't want to assign to God or the Spirit of God more than is accurate. But to me, I felt as if the Spirit of God had said to me, Larry, you're not broken. You're gay. And it's okay. The picture I sent of you with Jesus with his arm around the guy, and further on in the cartoon, the guy says, Jesus, I'm gay. And he said, hey, dude, I knew that. No problem.
I got a great laugh when you sent that to me.
So, I was... 7th grade is when I knew most definitely I was different, because I hit puberty, and all the guys were talking censored stuff. Yeah. I was in a private boarding school, and the language was very coarse, raunchy, and I'd be asked, what did I get that weekend, and I'm just like, what do I say? I mean, I'm not going to lie, but
well, kids are in school. Kids are assholes anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Because how they treat each other, even in the guys' locker room, girls pick on each other. It's kind of the nature of the beast.
Unfortunately.
So how did you deal with that in the present moment, knowing you are this thing, but everyone around you is a little different, but you're still trying to be comfortable in your own skin?
I was in my 50s when I came out. A relative of mine came out, and it was like, what? I had at times thought, I wonder,
yeah.
Because there were things kind of like was seen in me when I was a little kid,
right.
But then that particular relative had some physical maladies that made them look quite feminine in how they moved. If you've ever seen a person with cerebral palsy, for example, and how their hands are kind of bent in like that, and their movements are rather jerky, and it's the same kind of thing. It isn't at all, but people would say, oh, with a flip of the hand, and oh, you're just fey or gay, and that was something that person couldn't help at all. It was just how they were because of their physical deformities.
Right.
And so I just, for me, it was like, well, obviously it's just because of that, not anything else. And there was no other indication to me that person happened to be gay. It didn't matter to me. I mean, it mattered that I be supportive for them. But my point is, that relative was close enough, and I cared enough about them that it was like, I'm not being honest with myself. And I went into therapy through my school system. They had something, therapy sessions available to keep their staff mentally healthy.
Right.
And so I did that, and after, I don't know, probably about 6 to 8 weeks, I said to my therapist, I'm gay. I'm gay. And, I would state this very strongly, that my ex is a wonderful woman. Absolutely love her. Always will. unfortunately, she will have nothing to do with me. And you have that all the way to, I'm your biggest cheerleader. We're not married anymore, but I'm your biggest cheerleader. But unfortunately, she was all the way down at this end. And we did the best we could to what I would call a mixed orientation marriage, make it work. But there was a time where she said, "I can't do this anymore." It was. Yeah, we did both say through sickness and in health, but also I thinking that God would fix me, and her not believing even that I could possibly be gay at all. Just that I struggled with it, it broke her heart, and I absolutely get that.
I'm sorry you had to endure that.
It's hard, because it's never changed.
Yeah.
I don't get invited to family things. I still see my kids, but in terms of like the whole family, and I know some families do that. Now, for some of them, it's like, who would want to be in that situation? If you were there, you'd go, for goodness sake, don't come to this anymore when you're treated like that. But in other cases, it's like, as I said, sometimes you have an ex, whether it be a wife or a husband, that is your biggest cheerleader. But I did come out to her, not when I wanted to. It was sort of a forced situation because she was asking me questions and I wasn't going to lie. She said, "You bastard." So immediately, it was just like this tremendous betrayal that she felt. And she had said to me more than once that, "You lied to me." And it was like, honey, I lied to myself. I really thought God was going to fix me. But, he didn't. And that's okay, but it's not okay for you because you're having to endure us having been married 25 years before I shared this with you. And so, it breaks my heart for her, but I can't fix her either. I can't fix this for her. It's something that she's going to have to either continue to be bitter about or recognize that there are ways to treat your spouse when you're no longer married that are Christ-like, and there are ways that aren't. And I fully understand why she has trouble with that. But I'm going to try as best I can to treat her the way that I know I should. And unfortunately, that, for now, is I don't communicate with her in any way, shape, or form. Because when I do, it upsets her terribly. So that's the one thing I can do.
Just give that other person space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the best way. But why do people have such a hard time being themselves authentically?
You mean in general?
Yeah, in a general sense.
Well, I will say this, probably for the same reason that a gay or lesbian person has a hard time being themselves, but that magnifies the difficulty of it because it's more forbidden or questioned. Certainly people have a fear of how people will treat them, what they'll say, what will the church say, what will my best friends say? Would they really still be my best friends? And for a lot of us, we can watch how our best friends or whomever, the church, whatever it is you're talking about, you can watch them and you can see how they treat various things. Yeah. And you go, I'm not going there, because we see how, unless it's a person with who's really got their head screwed on straight and understands unconditional love, you're not going to see that a lot. And I think as people, we've seen that over and over again, and it is very scary.
When you talk about authenticity, but a real big thing, because I'm big into self-development. So, like, the biggest dichotomy in self-development is the perception of who you used to be versus who you're becoming. And I think that just rings so many bells for people, because they want you to be what their idea of you is.
Yes. Yeah, you think of the mom who said to her son, this was a visual that I watched. He was coming out to her, and she was just distraught. And she said, "Yeah." And the thing of, what will the church think? And what am I going to tell my friends? And so that's another thing about what you're asking is, how are others going to react to either you or someone else in your life, if they find out whatever it is. But the mom is like, says something about, you chose this. And he's like, "Mom, it's not a choice." And she says, very important, she says, "I don't believe that." Doesn't matter that it isn't a choice. And this child, this young man, has been through all this and gone through the years and has come to a place where he felt comfortable enough to share it with his mom, in hopes that she would show unconditional love, and she didn't, because what the others thought, what the church thought, what will the family say? That's more important. It shouldn't be. We know that. Everybody knows that it shouldn't be that way, but it is often. So yeah, and it's such a heartbreak that he ends up getting with others and building a life with what many in the LGBTQ community would call chosen family. Yeah. And we all do that, whether we're LGBTQ or not. For some of us, the parent may have sent you out and disowned you for something totally different, but they've disowned you, and to survive, you are going to need community. And one of the ways that can happen is with a chosen family. And I do have a chosen family here. Many of them are in my church. They're not all in the church. But they're people who accept me for who I am and recognize my gifts, and that just love me, period. And I've flubbed up with some of them. I mean, really, I can think of several situations where, I go, "Oh, I can't believe they're still even talking to me." I didn't mean to be that way, but I was. Yeah. And yet, they were able to show unconditional love, and that's absolutely necessary. But some parents, they never had that demonstrated. And that for my dad, Dad was in the Air Force and for 24 years, and even after he got out, he was still the colonel. I refer to him as the colonel because he was so hard, and he kind of ran the house like his regiment, and might not be the right term for Air Force, but you get the point. Yeah. And he did soften some as I started sharing with him how I was able to love him by faith, and that I knew how I was supposed to act, and I was choosing to do that. The feelings came. They weren't there at first at all, yeah, but they come. But choosing to love him by faith. But I became much more tender-hearted and forgiving of him. It still wasn't any fun, but he's forgiven. I really understand much better after Mom shared some of the things he went through, and I was just like, good God, it's amazing he even survived as a person when he went through those kinds of things, the kind of trauma that he went through, including World War II and, being shot down in a plane, and everyone on the plane, or most everyone, his buddies, died, and he didn't. And now you've got, survivor's guilt about, well, why me? And he never talked about that, but, it shaped who he was. And I also know his mom and his stepdad, and knew what they were like, and I could quite, how do I say it? Most assuredly say that they did not demonstrate unconditional love to him. They certainly didn't to the grandkids. And contrast that with my mom's parents, who did. But when you don't have it demonstrated, it's difficult to, someone says, love your enemies, love your neighbor as yourself. And who's my neighbor? Well, the story of the Good Samaritan, Jesus basically says, anybody. This despised Samaritan who you're not even supposed to acknowledge is your neighbor.
Yeah.
Wow, what? And that is the only thing I think that would begin to erode and break at the hardness and the division, is when people go, I don't feel like loving this person who stands for this or that. There is a difference between acting towards them in the way you ought to. So, for example, I'm not going to get online, and there's a lot of things I will not say. I may say them to my husband, about that person because I'm so frustrated.
Yeah, but
I will not get online and say those inflammatory, hateful words about another person. And that sometimes is about all I can do in terms of loving that person by faith. But I still can do that. And then when I'm presented with that person in a really difficult situation, and I'm basically asked to turn the other cheek, that's a whole nother book probably, about what that really means.
Yeah.
But still, recognizing their humanity, and that maybe that person never had unconditional love shown to them, and you can't fix that. Except you just try to love them unconditional.
We talk about turning the other cheek, but prior you were trying to give your partner peace. So how do you know in what scenario what's worth fighting for?
Wow. That's a deep question. I'm not sure I can answer it, but I know that with the situation where I was trying to give peace to my ex and be Christ-like in how I did that, even in that I can certainly do it in a way that is demonstrating unconditional love. Her response to that might be very caustic, understandable, really understandable, and I certainly don't need to be responding back, with the back and forth up, higher we go, slap, 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 punch, punch.
Yeah.
Obviously, that is not the thing to do, and choosing my words very carefully was a part of seeking to be peaceful about it. But also do so in a way that aligned with the way Christ has called me to walk and live in my life. I think in the moment, and the more that I am exposing myself to positivity and to the words and teachings of Christ, the more I do that, the more, and I've read more recently, some people are tend to not even want to have anything to do with what Paul says, which I was like, what? But after I listened to what they were saying, I could hear them saying that he was never actually with Jesus, and so how do I know that he really got the right idea? Is it okay to assume that God got it right and told them everything he needed to know? I can't answer that.
Yeah.
But the point is that reading Scripture, and there are overarching themes that I can hang my hat on, and those are the things that I need to continually expose myself to, because as one scripture says, guard your heart, because from it come all sorts of things that are either showing the darkness of your heart or the light in your heart, and that's something you cultivate. It's not just suddenly there.
Right.
A new believer, or not even talking about religion, but someone who's had a turn in the road and sees things a different way, and as an example, is sober, let's say, for the first time in quite a while, and sees the value in that, and sees the value in the 12 steps and how it's rebuilding relationships and those kinds of things. That's valid too, and I bring up sobriety and how do I want to say this? But I bring up the whole question of alcoholism because I would say probably, I think it's safe to say that I'm not an alcoholic. But there was a time where I was using alcohol to self-medicate when I was teaching. And without going into a lot of detail, I did end up going to rehab and took what I needed from it that was applicable to me. Yeah. And I was reinforced there that, yes, you're gay, I hear what you're saying, and yeah, you're a real gay, and that's okay, and that was a hard time for my ex, because she came as a part of that, to a weekend, and during that weekend, one of the counselors who was especially trained in that area, said to her, your husband's gay, and you are going to need to adjust your understanding to that. There's lots of things in all that, that y'all will need to work out and all, but it's that's who he is. Yeah. But going through that and having a chance to stop self-medicating, I had that opportunity as well to kind of, it wasn't that I became a Christian at that point. I was already a flawed, like everyone is, Christian. But I was actually able to latch onto the wagon and go for the ride on a lot of what I knew in as fact or as in my head, but now was learning to live that way.
I mean, it sounds like, although a lot of your seasons were up and down, you still came through at the end and found your true, authentic self.
I did, and many of the stories that you will read of folks who do come out, I have not read, I don't recall any where the person says, this is the worst thing I've ever done. I should have never come out. Now, we might say, any one of us, this was incredibly difficult.
Right.
The fallout and the hatred and the venom that I've experienced, nobody should ever have to go through. But now that I'm on the other side, I'm not constantly going, oh, did I do something that's going to make them think I'm gay? Did I give it away? Oh, did I, did they see me at the gay bar? Or, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you were constantly, there were actually two of you. There was the person you really were, but you could never be, and then you learn to perform constantly. Everything you do is a performance. And, in a way, it's true for everybody. Some of us perform a whole lot, and aren't being very authentic at all. But being able to be authentic, to be who I am, and, to not feel guilty about that, and to actually have some, for me, scriptural understanding that, I'm not just cherry picking things from Scripture to make myself happy and feel non-guilty. I can defend, my stand.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of religion is cherry picking. I mean, I'm not against religion, but people pick the Scripture or the passage that deems the situation or what they want to be about in that moment.
Yeah, we do that a lot. It's a human thing.
Yeah. As an outsider to that community, it just seems like to me, why does so many people from that community fight so hard just to get human basic rights? From the outside looking in.
Why do they have to, or why would they? I'm not.
Why do they have to fight so hard just for something that should be already?
Exactly. Yeah. Fear. I think more than anything else, it's fear of the unknown on the part of those who are not in the LGBT community, or the Hispanic community, or the Black community, or whatever community it is where there's some difference and there's a fear of the unknown, and they've been told, well, that, and so falsehoods are said. Falsehoods are believed because it's easier to do that than to make the effort to find out for yourself.
Yeah.
And I would, don't know what other questions you have, but I would leave you with this. This is one of those things you can put at the very end.
Yeah.
That, I'm trying to think exactly how to say it. Again, rabbit hole, and trying to dig my way out. Give me a second. If I don't think of it in a second, we'll move on, and it'll come back to me. But when someone says that being gay or lesbian or whatever is a choice, it isn't. And the way I like to drive that home for a person, not to be ugly or to go see gotcha, but it is a bit of a gotcha, because suddenly people tend to go, oh. People will talk about how it's a choice, and you can say, really it's not. Let me ask you this. When did you decide to be straight?
It's just who I am.
Thank you. Exactly. That it might be difficult to accept, but at the same time, it's like, just as that is as real to you as it can be, it's as real as it can be to me as well, that who I am as a gay man is just how God made me. And I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And I believe that's a part of it. There are things that I have been able to do as a gay man that a straight guy could not get away with, to be helpful. I mean, they a woman would be questioning, what's your motive? But if they a sister knows that I'm gay, there are things she'll share with me she wouldn't dare share with her guy. Yeah. I have a way of seeing things that, and we as LGBTQ people run a whole spectrum. You've got football players, hockey players, who won't come out until after they're out of the professional leagues. Understandably so. Now some are coming out. Some are not. They're being, how would you say, canceled, essentially. And others get away with it. Yay, that's good. But, it's just sort of a, who knows whether or not how it'll go. But, there is that whole spectrum. And, there are really tough guys who are attracted to other guys. And, it's who they are. And some people don't even realize that. It's just like, wait a minute, how can that be? Because they're not acting gay. There isn't one way to act gay any more than there is one way to be straight. People talk about the gay agenda, and it's like, okay, what's the straight agenda? Well, what do you mean? Exactly. What do you mean? We would love to have the freedom to get married, because what I do in the privacy of my home and who I love is none of your business. And who you love and what you do in the privacy of your home is none of my business. At times I feel like movies and other media have opened the bedroom door so much that it's like, get a room, literally in some cases, just get a room for those thoughts, get a room for that attitude. It's not something that you would say to your best straight friend. Why would you say it to me? Right.
Do you believe misogyny is still present in the workforce today?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Very much so.
I was looking at some statistics last night about women in the workforce. Mm-hmm. Although they're growing, they're still not up as far as compared to men.
Not paid for the very same job, or doing even a better job, where they should be getting more than the guy who's not. Women's sports. I was just reading yesterday. I'm not really up on the particular sport or person, but the point was, as a female, she was canceled a lot, but she just kept going. Yeah. Rapahoe or something similar to that is her last name. But anyway, she fought, and took a case to court with, I think it was probably like, not just her, but like a bunch of folks in the women's sport arena that were part of the suit, and they won. And they are getting paid the same amount if they win, the women's version of this basketball game, or this, probably not hockey. I've not seen any women's hockey.
I don't think I have either.
But it just doesn't exist. But when they rabbit hole, when they got done with the suit, that they had really made sincere progress to be able to get paid the same thing for the women's version of this Heisman Trophy or whatever it might be in basketball or another sport. They're getting paid the same amount now. Now, I don't know that that's across the board. Those other sports are going to probably have to go to bat for themselves. But in this particular sport, there was a fight against the misogyny, so I do think there's still a great deal of it. Maybe not quite as overt. It can be very, very subtle. Now, the women can pick up on it pretty quickly. I think they're a lot better than us guys who aren't really having to go through that. Even if we're on their team, we don't necessarily catch it, but we do sometimes. And I think it's our job to say, look, man, just grow up and grow a pair, and don't be jealous of this woman because she's doing a better job than you, any more than you should be jealous of Joe over there because he got the promotion because he did better than you did.
Yeah.
It's just
I mean, if somebody's doing a job better or deserves it, just give them their flowers. I don't care who you are. Just may the best man or woman win.
Yeah, but give them what they deserve.
How would you define peace?
Peace is not lack of conflict. I think peace, and I'm not there all the time, but I think peace is being grounded in someone or something bigger than yourself. When it comes to my faith, my Christian faith, in my case, I think it's appropriate to say over the years my belief system has changed dramatically. I think it's a lot more compassionate. Still not where it needs to be. We'll be working on that till the day I die. But there is that need for continual growth. But I have struggled with some things and have had to let go of some things. But I cannot let go of my belief that there is some sort of supreme being, call them God, Allah, the universe, and I talk to them all, I guess, because I'm not sure. There is so much misinformation and misinterpretation, and I didn't realize that was the context of this whole thing, and that changes everything. That this verse I've been told means this actually probably means something more like that, or doesn't apply to me at all, because that was then, and that this is now. There's so many laws in Leviticus that I don't follow, and most Jewish people do not follow, because they are not a part of the culture now, and even the reasoning behind some of the things, it was understandable at that time, and it worked with the mindset. My sister shared something with me once about pork, and she said, of course, the trichina worm lives in pork, and if you eat pork that's not cooked thoroughly, it's devastating what it will do. It will kill you, and what it does to anyone who does that. So not eating pork is really a pretty good idea when you don't know that, and medical science hasn't told you that yet.
Well, no, there's so much they don't tell us.
Yeah, so and yet I didn't know, and until she told me that, I was a kid at that point. But my point in all that is, there are still things, I think, when I look at the Ten Commandments as an example, there's not much of anything there that I would go, oh, that's just not right anymore. I get it. I get the reasoning and logic behind them. God says in the New Testament through Christ that, there are two commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus says that is actually the encompassing of everything. And if you start looking at even Levitical laws, some of them were about cleanliness and all that, but you look at laws or expectations throughout the years, and so many of them have to do with the fact that God simply wants to protect and provide for you. It's not easy, a celestial killjoy. But that being said, I can go to Leviticus and pull this verse out that says, man shall not sleep with man as one sleeps with woman. Well, I don't sleep with women because it's very unnatural for me. Yeah. It's natural for me to sleep with men, and the New Testament makes it pretty clear that I shouldn't be sleeping around, just willy-nilly, because it's really not good for my physical health, and it's not good for my mental health, and there's a much better way. But that aside, just the whole fact that I can take, like you've talked about, cherry picking, I can cherry pick all kinds of things to support but I can also cherry pick something and say, why are you eating this when it says not to do that? Oh, well, that was for the Jews. Okay. Well, what about this? This says that you should kill your child if they're disrespectful to you. Should we? You'll go to jail if you do. But it does say that. Yeah. And maybe we need to start looking at it through the lens of love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. That has ended up being the focus for me. And the one other thing I would say related to that is I don't have the answers, but I can look around, and I've not really had opportunity to share this where someone was challenging me or asking me, but I'm ready. If they say, well, how can you believe in a God with all the bad things that are going on? I can't explain all that. But this I can tell you. If I look at that television screen to tell me that happened from an explosion at a junkyard, no, it didn't. Right. Someone designed that. There is design built into it in the lines that are in it, and the circuits that are in it, in the way it works, and the fact that it uses electricity, because scientists understood how to use electricity. And that's just one example of trillions and trillions of examples where I see design. I see design in nature. I see design in us. You pick just one thing in us, DNA. And yeah, DNA messes up sometimes. I can't explain that. I don't know what God was thinking and all that stuff. But the way that it works and passes on a message of a whole new organism, and then in the organism, if you look at the eye or the ear, or you pick something and you start looking at the mechanisms in it, no, that did not happen by chance. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly how that was done. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I see design. And once I see design, I'm like, every time I see something made, that's like, oh, that's really cool. How did you make that? How did you come up with this concept? There's design, and there was intelligence. So I know that much, and so I never have to let go of that, and I don't have to have all the answers. And the other part of that is that, okay, why does God allow this, that, or the other to happen? And it truly confounds us sometimes. I look at the tremendous suffering that's happening in Palestine, and Gaza and Iran. what was it, 46, somewhere around there, every single one of those girls mattered. And yet just flippantly, well, it's war, and that's going to happen. Should happen in the first place, but that's my opinion. But so the rabbit hole. So the thing that along with the whole design thing, is I do think that there's intelligent design. I want as much as possible to know that person that is behind all this, walk with them and please them. And to me, in my life, that's just seeking to be the hands and feet of Jesus. But there's one other thing, how come all this stuff does happen? And I posit this. Let's just say, it's silly, but let's just say for a second you can be God, okay? And you have full control of everything. And let's just use 1,000 people. Now, we understand there are about 8 billion people in the world right now. But let's just use 1,000. Right. And each of them has their own free will. Some of them are just absolute gems, and some of them are the dregs of the earth. Some have been through hell and back, and some have never had to lift a finger. You've got all sorts of 1,000 people, and they're going to start doing what they do, whatever that is. And they're going to start running into each other in their lives and bumping into the realities of each other. Some bad things are going to happen. Someone's going to get murdered. Okay, well, I'll prevent, let's say you can prevent that murder. But what if preventing that murder causes 1,000 people to die? Because that murder ended up killing that person who would have killed off those 1,000 people. And on it can go to where if you had to control every single one of those people, but wait a minute, they have free will too, and now we're talking 8 billion people. God's hands aren't tied. This is the world. This is what He's made. You do have free will. You also have things you can do nothing about except just respond to them as best you can, but you can't necessarily stop them or fix them. And God could fix a whole bunch of things, and I do think He does intervene at times. But if you had to do that for 8 billion people,
be quite exhausting.
You would. It's not that it's too big a job. It's that messing with this here messes with that there, and He knows that.
Well, your analogy. Have you ever seen the movie The Butterfly Effect? It's got Ashton Kutcher in it.
I don't think so.
So it's kind of the same premise. So he's going through his life, and these different events keep happening, but he's able to put himself to sleep, and he can go back and alter the entire situation. Mm-hmm. But in doing so, that thing then alters his future. So it's like you noted, if you're going to change this, you're also going to change it over here. Mm-hmm. So you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. And you're talking 8 billion changes, because every single one of us is going to do something that probably we shouldn't.
That ripple effect. Be it good or bad.
Yeah.
I mean, what a beautiful definition of what peace is and could be.
In a sense, it is a choice. And it comes from, I think, a relationship with something that's greater than yourself, and for one thing, a recognition that no, you can't control everything.
Yeah.
And I can have it, and it's been called peace in the midst of a storm. I can recognize that God is with me. I don't know what's going to happen. I love the what is it called? I think the I don't know prayer, or something like that. And it's God, I don't know. I don't know what is going on. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn except to you. I don't have answers. I'm certainly open to whatever, but right now, I don't know. That's where I am, and that's okay. But yeah, need some guidance here because I'm sort of at an impasse.
Barack Obama publicly supported same-sex marriage back in 2012, but he's also one of the only, presidents that's openly supported the LGBT community. How did it feel to witness that shift and to see it kind of take place?
Let's just say I did not vote for Barack Obama.
Really?
And I feel like that was such a terrible mistake. Thankfully, he won still.
Yeah.
But I was still in the throes of my old way of looking at things. I grew up in a very conservative background. Not I would not say fundamentalist Christian but evangelical Christian probably. Not Baptist, Methodist, and there's it's sort of there's some different flavor there. So, more progressive than I could have been, but still, quite, and I have said and supported some things that I am, really sorry I did. But by that time, I had come out. I rejoiced that he was that supportive, and that he had the chutzpah to say that when that for even some in his camp would say that was just a step too far. No, it wasn't. People of any description, background, etc., need to be treated as humans. They need to be treated not less than, other than. They need to be treated the same way you or me want to be treated. It's.
I think it took great courage, not only for him, but because he's already under scrutiny, being the first black president.
Mm-hmm.
But then to also outspokenly support this other group.
Yeah.
It takes great courage to do that.
And I would say that probably because he did know what it was like to be a minority, it also gave him insight into some of the pain that the LGBT community has felt. And of course, if you're a person of color, and in the LGBT community, and transgender, I mean, it's just like you've got three incredibly awful strikes against you. It's not your fault. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. So yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful thing, and by that point, I could actually celebrate and appreciate who he was. I have a picture at home of Michelle Obama and George W. Bush embracing
each other.
And it's real. I don't know if you've ever seen that picture, but it's just the sweetest thing, and it's just like, well, damn, if they can do it, so can the rest of us.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, because the unconditional love can do that. It doesn't mean she agrees with him on hardly anything, probably, but she also recognizes his value as a person.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great segue to my next question. Which one do you think comes first? A female president or a gay president?
I think it's a toss-up. I do think it will depend on who the female candidate is, who the male candidate is. As an example, I would say, I've heard people say, they want Kamala to run, and I'm like, she's already done that, and that didn't work. It's not that I have anything against her. I'm just not sure that's the best strategy. I don't have an answer for that, as to whether she should, but I sort of think maybe not. As another example, Pete Buttigieg, oh my gosh, what an articulate, thoughtful, kind, balanced person he is. I'm sure there are things that he might say or do that I would not agree with. Yeah. You know, you don't agree with someone 100% ever. But I think he would make a stellar president. I'm not sure if he would get the votes, because there's still too many people out there who, you know, go, well, he really is a good person, and I think he might make a good president, but I just don't know. You know, that hanging on to the doubt of the past. I would love to see him become president. I'm extremely fearful for this country that, you know, we could, if certain people have their way, you know, pretty much go down the road of Nazi Germany, and it's going to take a long time for it to bounce back, because I do think that there are efforts being made to steal the election, and not just, you know, stop the steal. I mean, really, to, you know, and there are certain presidential candidates that will be candidates again that, you know, have said, you know, essentially, we'll do anything we have to. We can't let them win, because I will end up being, you know, finish the sentence.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not even sure that it matters. It does matter, I think, that we find a candidate who is willing to follow the Constitution and not be a king, because we are in serious trouble. I'm going to try to be positive, but I do think we are in serious trouble, and we better fight. And I will. I continue to wear my T-shirts that say things that might get me in trouble at Walmart and everywhere I go. But I'm going to keep on. I'm going to keep on saying it. People, terrible things are happening to people out in the streets. They're being dragged out of their houses day and night, and they are being taken away, and nobody knows where they are. Anne Frank, June 13th, 1943.
Diary of Anne Frank. I remember that.
Yeah, it's one of my T-shirts, because I'll be damned if I want to stay quiet, and I might get in trouble. I might go to prison. I could even lose my life, but I know who I am. I know where I'm going, and even though there is some, I'm not sure 100% of what that will be like, I can have peace. It will be not fun if somebody is torturing me or something, you know, and tell me I have to say, you know, that Trump is king, and I'm sorry, I was wrong. Not going to happen, you know. Kill me first, or I'll kill myself first, you know, rather than to recant or betray what is right.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's gun violence, education, the economy, or just human rights, do you think the country is moving forward or backward on these issues?
Backwards. For now.
Yeah.
You know, there are definitely aspects, you know, where, you know, human rights, there are people who are fighting for trans individuals who would not have done that 20 years ago, and now they are. And that's progress, that's forward. But, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you know, with some of these things is going on constantly. So it means that, you know, just as those who want to reduce our rights, want to make some people less than, you know, say that as an LGBT community we're grooming their children. No, who are trying to treat their children as individuals and as persons, not tell them that they can't do this or be that. And there's a balance. Yeah, there are probably some teachers who have gone too far. You always will have, someone who's too far on the side of balance. But there's so many teachers who just want to teach the kids and help them succeed. We are not the enemy as teachers.
Yeah. Well, I like to leave all those who listen to the podcast with a final thought from my guest. What do you think, or what do you believe people most understand about your views on the world?
Most understand or misunderstand?
Misunderstand.
I think I've sort of summed that up with several things I've said, and all of them are important. So I would sort of say, understand that a person in the LGBTQ community has no decision-making ability to be gay or not be gay. They certainly can stay in the closet, which essentially means not be authentic, not be themselves, not show who they are, not go to the club, etc. They can choose to not do that, and for some, that's good enough. Just don't do those gay things, and then it's okay. But oh my goodness, let me ask you not to do your straight things. I mean, I understand that in your mind, as a person, some people may think that there is the gay agenda, and so that's not a fair question to ask a straight person to not do their straight agenda. But yeah, it is fair to ask me to not be able to show affection within reason, because I don't expect a straight couple to be copulating in public. Yeah. But within reason, if I want to hold my husband's hand, there are some places where I can. Some cities where I can. There's some cities where I don't dare. There's some countries where I will be killed, for doing that. But no, it's not a choice. And all people need to be given respect and kindness. Jesus didn't say the golden rule flippantly. And he didn't say love God with everything that is in you and your neighbor as yourself flippantly. That is one of the most misfollowed commandments, because it is essentially, he said, it covers all of them.
Yeah.
And as a Christian, anybody, whether you agree with the things I've said or not, I do think it's fair for me to say to myself and to all those who consider themselves a Christ follower, I'll first address that when he said those things, he meant those things. And all we have to do is look at some of the things that are being done in this country. And it's not that I'm a progressive, it's not that I'm a liberal, it's that I need to be doing what Jesus told me to do and live the way he told me to live. And a whole bunch of us who name the name of Christ are not doing that. And we are terribly wrong if we're not doing what we should. But then there's, some folks are atheist or Buddhist or whatever, but, in those teachings and even in atheism or humanism, there are standards and there's things that you just know how to treat people. And I've heard it said, and you have too, I'm sure, before, that there's some people that I can observe and watch, and they are better Christians than some of the Christians that I know and watch. They're better. They do it better.
Yeah.
And that's without, at least with their knowledge of Jesus, working through them. They're just good people. supposedly they're all going to hell because they haven't gotten saved, and I don't believe that. That's a whole nother podcast, and probably an entire, how should I say it, seminary education for the rest of your life.
Right. That's beautifully spoken.
Thank you.
Larry, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All your candid answers and beautiful words.
I appreciate it.